When your alarm jolted you awake from sleep, you almost fell out of your bed but caught yourself before meeting the floor. Disoriented, you looked around to see your familiar room, bed, ceiling, and so on. Wasn't I on the couch? The last thing you remembered was, oh, falling asleep on Bakugou while watching a movie, and your eyes snapped open at the realization. Oh God, that means he carried me to bed and I wasn't even awake to enjoy it. You turned off your alarm and groaned into your pillow, thinking back to how nice it was to have a quiet night with him. Right. Work. Fuck. You also noticed your phone was plugged up, which you definitely didn't remember doing. For someone who's supposed to be a stubborn asshole, he's really considerate. But the office wouldn't wait for your early morning frustrations or musings. Stepping down from your bed, you expected your foot to touch on bare floor, but instead, the distinct crinkle of paper slid between your heel and the carpet. Huh? Looking down, you noticed a piece of folded paper lying on the ground. You didn't recognize it, too sleepy to consider where it came from at the moment. Instead, you picked it up and tossed it onto your bed before sliding over to your closet to pick out your clothes for the day. You opened your door without thinking, forgetting that at some point you'd wake up without Bakugou Katsuki practically living in your apartment. Pausing once the couch came into view, you bit your lower lip. His presence seemed like such a constant at this point that once he disappeared, whenever that would be, you'd surely feel the sting of heartache. Quietly, you peered over the back of the couch to see a sleeping lump wrapped up in blankets and let out an anxious breath. Not today, your mind whispered as your heart squeezed. He looked so cute while sleeping that it was tempting to take a picture, but decided against the indulgence. After showering and dressing for work, you realized you left your phone in your bedroom. Tiptoeing across the living room, you slid back inside to unhook your phone from the charging table. It was then you remembered the odd piece of paper you'd found this morning, your eyes glancing down at where you left it on the bed. Japanese letters were scrawled on the front, but you weren't sure what it said. You unfolded it to find it filled, top to bottom, with Japanese. Did Bakugou write this? A jarring thought struck you like a slap across the face. What if he anticipated leaving and left you a note as a final goodbye for you to find? You felt your eyes tear up a bit at such a heartfelt idea, but after examining the note, you noticed how the lettering didn't quite match up to Bakugou's form the few times you'd seen his scribbled notes. But it had to be from him, right? Who else could have... Oh shit! A note left on your floor where Bakugou appeared. Too much of a coincidence, right? I have to wake him up. Walking back out into the living room with the note in hand, you gently nudged Bakugou's shoulder. Hey, Bakugou, wake up! The last thing you expected was for him to bolt awake, hands outstretched and ready for a fight. If you hadn't stepped back just in time, he would have smacked you in the face. His wide eyes told you that he wasn't used to being woken up, or else he slept far more on edge than you'd previously assumed. Oh, sorry, it's just me, you said as his sleepy eyes landed on you and his shoulders relaxed slightly. He still looked like an adorably cranky cat who was woken up far too soon for his own liking.
Nani?
You pulled up the translator app on your phone while also holding the folded note out to him. Did you write this? I found it on my floor this morning. He took it with a definite, what the hell are you talking about, look in his eyes, turning it over to see the scrawled lettering on the back. His face turned to one of blown-out shock as he quickly opened the paper. Crimson eyes scanning it from top to bottom. You noticed one of his hands was shaking slightly.
Kirishima,
was all he whispered, his eyes never leaving the paper, but you caught it. The note read,
all I have is this one piece of paper, so things are gonna be quick. Bakugou, it's Kirishima. Shit, man, I hope you're okay. We found out you were missing after a few hours. Lucky for you, the villain attacked in broad daylight and people saw what happened. Summary. Villain used her quirk on you to teleport you outside of our universe to try and get rid of you permanently. She's been doing this to small-time heroes for several decades and remained hidden because if whoever she teleports dies, she can use her quirk again almost immediately. She's been spacing it out for years, picking off heroes so she'd be hard to track. She can't control where people go, it's random, but we know you're alive because her quirk tells her that much. It leaves her physically exhausted if you're still alive. Using it made her weak and slow enough to find after we gathered witness accounts. She's in custody. I had to wait 2 weeks to send the stupid letter until her quirk, which is crazy dangerous and rare obviously, recharged just enough. All I could send was this letter, but I have no idea if you got it because we can't tell if you've moved around or not. It should arrive in the same place you popped up. You could be in the jungle or some war zone for all we know. Her quirk has a time limit, and unfortunately, sending the letter extended the time until you can come back, but we had to try and let you know something. Her quirk will wear off completely after 35 days from the first day you arrived, and you'll be warped back here. Everyone's freaked out and all we can do is send the stupid paper, but bro, you're coming home soon, just hang in there. We're holding down the fort until you can kick villain ass again. Villains try to rise up with you gone, but you aren't the only badass around. Thank Deku, Ida, and Yamomo, and me, for keeping things under control. Everyone. P.S. Your mom says you better come back in one piece, brat. Sorry, she made me write this.
You gasped, your hand flying to your mouth when you realized your guess had been correct. This note was from his home. Bakugou, did Kirishima send you a letter? All he did was nod as he read the letter at least a few times before running a hand through his sleep-mussed hair.
What the fuck? They really got me information.
Well, what does it say? A tightness formed in your chest as you considered what this might mean for him. Mean to him. Bakugou looked up at you with a bizarre mixture of both defeat and excitement.
It says when I'm going home.
The anticipation of truly knowing the last day you'd ever see Bakugou again gripped at your heart like tightly pulled wire. While your morning anxiety formed from the unknown made you squirm, having an end date to all this sounded just as stressful.
How many days have I been here so far?
He asked, pulling you out of your head before you could think too hard about the implications. You glanced away and pretended to conduct some mental math when in reality, you'd kept track of the days like you counted down the hours at work until you could go home. 14, I think. Today marks 2 weeks. Wide awake now, he looked back at the letter and swung his legs over the side of the couch to let his bare feet touch the floor, the blanket he used draped across his lap.
According to this, I'm here for another 3 weeks. They can't bring me back for a total of 35 days from the first day I got here.
Holy shit. 3 weeks? That was far longer than probably both of you anticipated he'd be stuck here. Your pulse raced selfishly with the knowledge that he'd be here for 3 more weeks, while knowing he wanted desperately to get back home. Sorry. That's a long time. I know you're eager to get back, but at least you have information. Does it answer some of the questions you had? Again, he stared at the paper even though you knew he'd read it a handful of times in the few minutes you'd been standing there.
Yeah, quite a few. They've got this fucking villain in custody for a while, but had to wait for her stamina to come back enough to send the note.
It was painfully obvious that he was answering you more on reflex than anything, absorbed in the note like a sponge soaking up a fresh new spill. His eyes were distant, lost in thought, as though he were looking past the note he stared at so intently. You had your own busy thoughts to consider with this new information, but looking down at your phone, you cursed. Shit. I have to get to work. Are you going to be okay? He just nodded. Again, more of a mindless reaction than a proper answer. A stray thought whispered in the back of your mind, bitter and hard to swallow. Maybe he doesn't want to be with you that long. You bit your tongue and tried your best to shake off the guilt of selfishness. He missed home. He didn't belong here no matter what your heart told you. I have to go to work. I'll see you tonight. You quickly grabbed your things and practically ran out the door. Ran from your thoughts. Ran from your feelings. Ran from the idea that he'd tire of you soon enough. When you finally arrived at your desk, you practically dropped your bag on the floor in your rush to busy your mind with tedious work. Anything to dull the ache in your chest. You forced yourself to look on the bright side of things. Now that you knew exactly how long he'd be here, you could plan your surprise without fear of him disappearing before you could carry it out. Stay focused. Don't come to conclusions you can't back up. With renewed vigor, you put yourself to work to make sure you'd make it home at a proper time tonight and used every spare moment to research your developing plan. Meanwhile, the sound of the front door shutting snapped Bakugou out of his daze. He looked up to see you gone in your rush to avoid showing up late to work. You'd been right in the blind confidence you'd voiced on Saturday about his friends. They'd managed to get this single piece of communication to him, even if it was just a note. It answered most of his questions. What kind of quirk was used, how it affected the villain, that his friends know he's alive, among other things. With new clarity on the situation, Bakugou felt a huge fucking weight lift from his shoulders. But now, time was the issue. He now knew the exact day when he'd be going home, which should have been a good thing, a great thing. But 3 more weeks? He anticipated few more days, maybe a week at most. The worst outcome, of course, would have been months, or never. Think fuck that was no longer a viable option. And then there was you, the other massive factor in this equation. Was it even okay if he stayed here that long? You were too damn nice to kick him out, that much was obvious, but for all he knew, you had plans that didn't account for his extended stay. Too dazed from the note and bombardment of new information to ask before you ran off to work, Bakugou sighed and leaned back into the couch. And at the rate you two had been acting together? Shit. I'm fucked, aren't I? This growing emotional attachment to you didn't sit well with him. It was one thing to be open with how the two of you felt on the basis that he could disappear at any time, but now he had 3 weeks to spend with you, talk with you, have fun with you, kiss you, or... The image that popped into his head reminded him briefly of his dream the previous night, and he thanked no one in particular that you weren't there to see his face burn in flustered embarrassment.
Ugh, so damn stupid. I don't even know if I can stay here yet. I'll have to ask tonight.
After scalding his skin with a hot shower, Bakugou fixed himself some breakfast and wondered what to do for the rest of the day. Hell, he had 3 weeks' worth of free time to do whatever he wanted, which, given the circumstances, wasn't much. Craving the thrill of satisfaction of fighting villains, he groaned at the idea of doing this same routine. Working out, cooking, reading, for 21 more days. Not counting weekends since you didn't work and often took him out on your own dime. Saturdays and Sundays were interesting, at least.
I'll figure it out, I guess.
Bakugou glanced over at the 2 books he'd been switching between. The novel you bought him and the dictionary.
Might as well learn another fucking language.
Since you were basically the only person he could talk to reliably, cutting down the language barrier didn't sound like the worst idea. Relying on your phone wasn't ideal, but it worked, and with so much time in front of him, anything productive sounded appealing. So Bakugou grabbed his books and a bottle of water and headed out the door. For you, work was surprisingly fruitful. Your intense focus on avoiding the topic of Bakugou leaving made time fly by, and before you knew it, your stomach growled in anticipation of lunch. Finally, you said, after stretching out of your desk to head downstairs. After grabbing something quick from the cafe next door, you sat outside and enjoyed the brief hour of sunlight before you had to head back to work. Your phone buzzed while you attempted to swallow a mouthful of food.
Gee, wonder who it is.
Assuming correctly, your friend who knew about Bakugou wanted to know all the juicy details from the weekend after you bragged to her Saturday night after the two of you confessed. So, how things going with the new man?
Lol, no, I haven't touched his butt yet, but it's going really well.
You have the opportunity. I'm not gonna rush it. Next question. Has he touched your butt?
No, but I want to say he stares sometimes. Also this.
You went through the gallery in your phone and sent her the picture you and Bakugou took together. Feeling a bit less insecure compared to this morning, you smiled while looking down at the two of you immortalized in a photo on your phone. He, Bakugou Katsuki, willingly agreed to take a photo together. Maybe you were working yourself up over nothing. He's so cute. It didn't take long for your friend to reply back, raving about how handsome he was while pitying herself that she hadn't found someone for herself. He won't be here forever, but I'll make his time here count, you told yourself while trying your hardest to avoid the looming 3-week deadline before his inevitable return. Your mother also called before you finished lunch. I'm popular today, huh? Picking up the phone, you balanced it between your shoulder and ear so you could still eat lunch between sentences. Hello? Hi, honey. Sorry, I know I called you at work. You busy? There must have been a reason for her call since you normally spoke just once every couple of weeks or two. Nah, just eating lunch. Need something? Just wanted to check in. Nosy mom things. Where's that picture I asked for of this boy,
Ah, there it was. The classic prying mother.
You shook your head and took another bite of food. He's definitely more of a man than a boy, for one. And two... Taking your phone away from your ear, you sent her the same picture of you and Bakugou that you sent your friend to appease her curiosity. Plus, you felt like bragging about him a bit. Okay, sent it. Tell me what you think. As someone who never turned her phone settings to silent, your mother's button presses on her end were audible. Let's see. Oh, okay. You were right about him being handsome. He has a nice smile. His eyes are an interesting color, almost more red than brown. What does he do for a living? His eyes were the main feature that stood out from a normal person's, since no one here had naturally red eyes. You thanked your mother's lack of intrusive questioning, except now you had to lie about his job, and she always picked up on your lies. He, is in public service. He's from Japan, so the jobs are a bit different over there. It's hard to explain. His job is basically helping people, though. Technically, hero work counted as a public service job, right? She remained quiet on the other end for a moment, but luckily didn't pry for more information. Interesting. Well, I'm making this my new phone background to show you off. You almost spat out your food at her very casual comment. Oh my god, seriously? Even I didn't do that. You're my only daughter and you rarely send me photos, so yes, I'm keeping this one front and center. I can tell the smiles are genuine. Well, I'll let you get back to lunch. Make sure he's polite to you and treats you right. If she could tell through a single photo that his contentment was real, then maybe you truly had been worrying over nothing. Trust me, if he didn't, I would have kicked him out no matter how handsome he was. Alright, love you. Love you too. With that, you hung up and quickly finished your lunch. 3 whole weeks. I still have to do some research, but tomorrow I should be able to ask him about it. Now that you knew Bakugou would be here, all you had to do was surprise him with your idea and hope he said yes. As the end of your workday neared, Bakugou stood in the kitchen of your apartment, sorting through the groceries in your fridge and pantry to figure out what to cook for dinner. He'd been thinking non-stop about the note and what it meant for him, you, and the people back in his world. They had to continue fighting and keeping the peace without him, Not that they couldn't handle it, of course, but when a villain actually succeeded in whatever stupid and nefarious plans they conjured up, then other assholes were sure to feel a confidence boost in their ability to take down heroes. From Kirishima's note, it seemed like everyone pulled together to keep things in order, though. Even in his absence, they supported him. Bakugou really was a sap. The roommate situation was another frustration entirely. What if you needed him to leave? Where the hell would he go without any fucking money, ID, and a language barrier to boot? He didn't truly believe you'd kick him out on the street, though. If you didn't 2 weeks ago when he was an asshole stranger, Bakugou assumed you wouldn't do it now. But he wasn't about to take any chances, which was why he decided to make sure dinner tasted amazing to butter you up when he asked if he could stay for the next 3 weeks. A little bribery couldn't hurt, right? Bakugou was tasting some sauce he'd mixed together when he walked through the door. Glancing up at the microwave clock, it read 7:06.
Good.
He could tell you were in a much better mood and looked less exhausted than the previous day as well. You sniffed the air and he watched this stupid grin appear on your face as you smiled at him. Wow, whatever you're making smells so good. I feel pretty spoiled at having dinner ready when I get home. Spoiled? If anything, you spoiled him with your generosity and kindness. The bare minimum he could do was cook, and it didn't feel like nearly enough. You set your phone on the counter and let your chin rest in the palms of your hands while you leaned on the counter. I don't mind ordering if you get tired of cooking. Or you could wait until I get off work and I could make something. Bakugou turned towards you and scoffed at your suggestion.
As if anything you ordered would be as good as what I make.
He smirked when you rolled your eyes because you knew it was true.
Also, no, don't argue.
Are you implying my cooking isn't as good as yours? Struggling to hold back a laugh, he stirred the food in front of him.
You said it.
You let out an exaggerated groan before leaning away from the counter. Sassed in my own apartment. Can't believe this. So much disrespect. Previously filled with a whirlwind of turmoil and stress from the previous day, Bakugou now felt glad that you'd returned to giving him attitude in that stupidly charming way that made him smile without realizing. Ignoring your comment, he turned down the heat on the stove.
Food's almost done.
You slid in beside him and reached up to grab a few plates, waiting impatiently for him to fill his own plate.
Chotto matte,
he said, while meeting your hungry glare with one of his own. That tongue of yours peeked out from between your smirking lips, and he had half a mind to make you swallow it.
Later,
he thought, while dipping his things out extra slowly just to see the exasperation in your face. Once you'd finally filled your plate, the two of you sat down to eat. He needed to wait and see your reaction, to ease you into a carefree mood before he asked about the weight on his mind. The look of joy and satisfaction that crossed your face, complete with that dumb chair wiggle, gave him a pride boost he definitely didn't need. It didn't hurt, though. Bakugou, it's so good! I feel pretty lucky, you know. Like I said last week, but without the bullshitting around truth this time. You must have meant last Friday when he caught himself unintentionally flirting while you let slip how lucky you were to know him. He could have given some sarcastic answer, something to embarrass you once again, but instead he remained focused.
Hey, I gotta ask you something. And don't lie or promise something you can't fulfill.
He watched you slowly swallow a bite of food before nodding for him to continue, his serious tone catching your full attention. Bakugou crossed his arms and stared up at the ceiling. He hated asking for favors or help.
Do you have a problem with me staying here for the next 3 weeks? Like the note said this morning.
Glancing to his left, you tilted your head in a way that once again reminded him of a confused puppy. Did you think I was going to kick you out or something? You asked, as though the mere thought of it sounded ludicrous. He didn't think so, no, but he had enough respect for you to double-check that he wasn't overstaying his welcome.
35 days is a long time to stay somewhere spontaneously. You could have, I don't know, family visiting or trip planned. I need to make sure you aren't passing up other things for my sake.
Being a burden didn't sit well with him, and he wasn't about to rearrange your schedule just to keep him occupied. You stared at him earnestly and set down your fork. I appreciate you asking, but as I've said before, you aren't a burden. If my parents come to visit, they stay in a hotel, and I don't have any extravagant plans to take a trip or anything. My main concern, I guess, is that you have to wait so long to go home. The news is good, but not what you were probably hoping for. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding and looked at you properly. Even now you concerned yourself with his problems. Maybe you really were just that fucking nice.
It's better than bad news, or no news at all. I'll fucking take it.
Bakugou rarely thanked anyone, but he huffed out an
arigato
before taking another bite of food. A change in topic sounded good right about then. Besides, you started, I get to eat your food for a few more weeks. Absolute torture.
Smartass.
He just grinned as you nudged him with your foot for that one. You could tell he'd been stressed about asking such a simple question, and since he cooked dinner, you figured it was only fair that you fight over the dishes again.
Just give up, you gremlin.
He teased, while easily keeping you away from the sink as you reached forward fruitlessly. Me? You're the gremlin. Just let me help.
No, you've helped enough. Why are you still in your work clothes?
It was an obvious ploy to get you distracted and away from the sink, and you were about to argue about him telling you what to do when he practically shoved you out of the kitchen. Crossing your arms, you narrowed your eyes at him and said, "You're not the boss of me." Bakugou matched your glare in a way that told you he always won glaring contests while taking a threatening step towards you. "I'm gonna shower. This isn't over." You stuck your tongue out at him before quickly retreating it back into your mouth when he gave you a "watch it" look. Tempting though it was to tease him endlessly, you wanted to brush your teeth and feel comfortable for the rest of the night. After grabbing a long t-shirt and some shorts, you headed towards the bathroom while giving Bakugou another playful glare along the way. As you washed, you thought about what it would feel like in the morning without the anxiety of wondering whether or not Bakugou was gone. But now you had a countdown timer. It was bound to stress you out the closer it got to his last day here. It felt far longer than the 2 weeks that he'd been around so far, and you had 3 left. You weren't about to waste any time wondering about how you or he might feel in the future. He was here now. You sang, even though you knew Bakugou was probably listening outside. The fact that he complimented you on your voice boosted your confidence, and you didn't mind letting it ring out through the acoustics of the tiled room. Bakugou was sitting on the couch when you came out of the bathroom with your work clothes tucked under your arm. Kirishima's note was gripped tightly in his hand. He must have read it over and over until he had it memorized by the end of the day, though mild shock laced his handsome features as though wondering if it was truly real. When he looked up, you tried not to freeze from his captivating stare. "Hey," you said, before moving to walk past the couch and dump your clothes in your hamper. You failed to spend much time with him the previous day due to the whole fiasco with work, and you wanted to ask him more questions about the contents of the note, so you grabbed your phone and sat down next to Bakugou on the couch, aware of the slim bit of space between you. "How many times have you read the note today?" you asked. He hummed before folding it up to sit neatly between his fingers.
"A lot. Wanted to make sure nothing was hidden between the lines. No hidden messages or anything. And to check whether or not it was really from Kirishima."
The thought that it could be someone posing as his friend hadn't occurred to you. "Can you tell if it's real?" A soft smile lit up his face as though he were digging back into old memories.
"Yeah, it's him all right. We went to school together to become heroes, and he'd always bug me to help him study, so I'm familiar with his handwriting."
"I'm glad they were able to get something to you, even if it's just a note. What else does it say besides a time frame?" Bakugou leaned back into the couch cushion, and you couldn't help but notice the way his arm muscles twitched.
A summary on the villain, what happened, and the quirk.
He went on to explain more details about the villain and what his friends were dealing with back home. At the confirmation that he could have wound up somewhere far more lethal, you couldn't hold back a gasp. You really are lucky, I guess, to wind up here in a city rather than somewhere else. You tried not to think of him drifting helplessly in space or trying to survive in a jungle by himself. Bakugou nudged you in the side to force you out of hypothetical tragedy.
I'm here, so don't stress about it. I already went through the what-if scenarios enough, and I'm not gonna start that shit again.
His steadfastness grounded you, reminding yourself that he was here and not somewhere else. I guess when you put it that way, it's sort of like serendipity, I guess? Maybe you were being too sentimental too soon, but it felt like a succinct way to summarize how you viewed the whole situation. Bakugou's expression softened a tiny fraction before he turned back to the note.
Note also said some villains try to rise up like dumbasses with me gone, but they handled it. At least it was just one lone villain and not some plot by an organized group.
Told you to believe in your friends. See? I was right. You gloated to ease the tense air in the room. And you sound like a big shot if those assholes thought they could just take over with you gone. There you went, complimenting him again. Everyone back home knew to keep their praise to a minimum by now to avoid his ego swelling up to the size of a stadium, but he didn't mind showing off for you. Sitting back to make yourself comfortable, he watched you stretch and cross your legs, the bare skin catching his attention as he lost his train of thought. You were close enough for him to smell the fragrance of your soap and feel your leg brush against his. It was tempting to just reach over and kiss you, but he resisted. For the moment.
Heh, I am fucking impressive.
He gloated unabashedly to divert from the road his brain was heading down. You just rolled your eyes and giggled. He'd missed that sound the previous day and realized he'd get to hear it for a few more weeks. Not a bad thought. Hotshot hero. So, tell me how the hero system works. Are there rankings, sidekicks? You asked. He hummed before answering, glad for the distraction.
Yeah, there's a ranking system based on popularity in solved cases. I don't give a shit about whether or not I'm popular so long as I can do my job.
His brash attitude didn't always have the most positive effect on his social standing, but it didn't concern him much. Some people ate up his no-bullshit personality and clamored for his merch in public appearances. He'd been a brat in high school, but learned quickly that what he said and how he acted did, in fact, impact how people saw him as an effective hero. He didn't change so much as evolved. You leaned forward with a curious expression, a strand of hair falling across your face. He felt an odd urge to brush it away, but left it when you inquired. So, Mr. Hero, where do you rank? He couldn't help but smirk.
I'm the number 2 hero out of everyone. Damn Deku taking up the number 1 spot. But I'll surpass him soon.
To say you looked shocked was probably an understatement, with your eyes blown comically wide and your jaw hanging slack as you leaned into his space. Really? Are you serious? Bakugou's eye twitched, thinking that wasn't exactly the reaction he was hoping for.
What, you think I'm lying?
You waved your hands in the air. No, it came out wrong. I meant it in a "that's amazing" kind of way. You're number 2? Wow. The absolutely glowing smile you gave him radiated warmth, and his heart swelled at the idea you felt secondhand elation on his behalf. Even though he didn't hold the top spot, you skipped right over the mention of Deku and honed in on stroking his ego. His eyes sparkled at the sentiment. So that means you're pretty much better than everyone. You really are a badass. I'm proud of you. Your words and smile mesmerized him long enough for you to reach up, grab him by the cheeks, and plant a searing kiss on his lips before he realized what was happening. Warmth flooded Bakugou through your hands and lips down into the base of his spine like a buzzing hum. The absence of this small affection the previous day struck him like a train when he realized he missed it. Once the initial shock wore off, his hands found refuge on your waist, wanting to hold you there, to savor the feeling and hold it like a keepsake memory. Neither of you pulled away as your lips started moving, slotting with his perfectly as he closed his eyes and his thumbs rubbed small circles into your shirt. What started out as a chaste congratulatory kiss quickly turned deeper and hungrier as seconds passed. The combination of knowing you thought so highly of him, that you were proud of him of all the damn things, and wanting to give into this needy indulgence spurred him on as he moved his lips against yours in a steady rhythm. Your hands moved from his cheeks to knead the skin between his neck and shoulders as his own shifted from your hips to the small of your back.
Closer,
he thought selfishly, leaning forward to envelop himself in whatever you willingly offered. You didn't object, but he dared not lose himself too much, his brain screaming one thing while his mouth whispered another. When you made a small noise, he chased after it with unsated hunger, swallowing it before picking up the pace of the kiss, desperate for more. You pressed your chest to his, and his hands tightened around your back, your fingernails scraping against his skin in a way that sent shivers down his spine. He'd never been this close, this wound up in you before, and damn it, he wasn't about to slow down now. You felt so incredibly warm with Bakugou flesh against you, like that was where you were supposed to be. Every time he moved, he shifted, he grunted, you felt your self-control slipping. He felt and tasted so good that the last thing you wanted to do was stop now. You tentatively ran your tongue over his bottom lip, asking for permission he gladly gave as he repeated your actions. He kissed the same way he did everything else, with the intent on winning. His scent and taste made your entire body vibrate. Sliding your tongue against his, you moaned a bit louder, his fingers gripping your back in a fruitless attempt to be even closer, even though no space remained between you. Assuming Bakugou would hold back when it came to vocal expressions of affection, he found his rhythm in actions rather than words, and kissed you harder and faster as his chest vibrated against yours with every noise he made that mirrored your own. The room turned unbearably hot as you tugged at his hair gently, experimentally, before an image of you straddling him appeared behind your closed eyelids, and you knew that if you didn't pull back now, that things would move too quickly, too soon. With restraint you didn't think you possessed in the heat of the moment, you pulled back agonizingly slowly, while nipping at his lip in the same way he'd done on your bathroom floor. Bakugou paused, his breath heavy, as his chest heaved and a bead of sweat ran down his neck into the collar of his black shirt. By the time you separated, just enough to avoid your lips touching, he had you pressed so tightly against him that he could feel your heartbeat like a drum in your chest, and was positive you felt his own as well. His hands remained at your back, and your fingers continued to thread through his hair when he opened his eyes and stared at your flushed cheeks and kiss-bruised lips and half-lidded eyes, the lingering taste of you on his tongue as he attempted to swallow and catch his breath. It was only then that he realized how sweaty his palms were, the combination of body heat and lust sending them into overdrive. He needed to let go, to move, to back away before he left a wet spot on your shirt, but the best he could manage was to move them back to their original spot on your waist. Your eyes, sultry and glistening like twinkling stars, forced him to stare, unable and unwilling to look away. Bakugou didn't know what to say. Words felt inadequate after such a heated moment of getting literally wrapped up in each other, paranoid that it would turn awkward when all he wanted to do was stay right here. You were still too close, and the urge to pull you back in at this distance almost overcame him, but he retained some small semblance of self-control. Holy fuck, he was thirsty. You ran your tongue around your mouth, saliva dribbling down the back of your throat as you attempted to get a hold of yourself. His carmine eyes never left yours. You knew you were blushing furiously, but his own cheeks were dusted pink, so at least the two of you matched. A sudden wave of shyness fluttered through you as you fought against the ocean tides just to keep the distance between you when you finally broke eye contact for a split second. "Water?" you managed to ask in a squeaky voice.
Water.
He mirrored in your language with a quick nod. When he finally let go of your shirt, a lonely shiver spread across your skin at the lack of contact, but you managed to stand up without alerting him to your jelly-like legs as you padded into the kitchen with a controlled pace. Bakugou mentally thanked you, clearing his throat and running his hands through his hair as he readjusted himself on the couch. However, that made him painfully aware of, "Oh, shit." He cut his eyes quickly to you in the kitchen, your back to him as you pulled down glasses and stuffed them with ice from the freezer.
Fucking hormones.
He cursed, after realizing the makeout session had left him physically compromised without a phone call to distract you this time. Positioning his legs as inconspicuously as possible that he hoped beyond hope would obscure his problem, he wiped his sweaty palms on his sweatpants, a temporary solution until he could actually stand up and drench himself in ice-cold water, when he felt the couch dip beside him and watched you hold out a glass for him to take.
Arigato.
He managed, before chugging nearly half the glass in one desperate gulp. As you drank from your own glass, you tried to keep your eyes to yourself. That had been incredibly intoxicating and left you more than a little flustered, though you weren't exactly mad about it. A bubble of awkward tension now surrounded the two of you, and you weren't sure what to say after an even more intense makeout session than the previous one. Chancing a peek at him through your eyelashes, you noticed his cheeks were still dusted pink. You left a bit of distance between the two of you this time, despite the urge to sit closer. Bakugou finished his water before you did, and looked as though he missed the brief distraction. He started, looking like a deer caught in headlights. You remembered how he explained he wasn't the best with words, so you chimed in to save him the trouble and hopefully ease the tension. "It's okay. I don't want things to be awkward. Want to play a game? I bet I can beat you this time around." A change in topic sounded like a good idea, and gave you the chance to get a hold of yourself. Bakugou seemed to agree, giving you a quick nod.
Not a chance, but you could try.
After you handed him the controller, you couldn't help but get in one last comment just to see him squirm a bit, and add yet another notch to his ego belt. "Gotta say, though, you're a good kisser." Rather than boast about how you were right, his ears glowed and you swore you saw him sink even deeper into the couch while mumbling something too low for your phone to pick up. You couldn't help but suppress a giggle.
Just play the damn game.
Now that you knew how to rile him up, you could take advantage of it over the next couple of weeks to push his buttons. Just a bit. It didn't take long before Bakugou's tension eased, and he yelled smugly while you groaned loudly whenever you lost. If he was here for another 3 weeks, then you'd need to be more careful about how you acted around him. Not that you didn't necessarily want to have more makeout sessions, but you were well aware that moving too quickly or acting without proper consent could ruin an evening, and that was the last thing you wanted. Once you won at least a couple of matches out of the handful you played, you felt your eyes start to shut as wariness finally hit you at the end of the day. "I think I'm done, and you only won for now, so don't give me that face." Bakugou just scoffed and handed over the controller for you to wind up and put away. You debated on whether or not to give him a goodnight kiss, but ultimately told yourself that a quick peck would be fine. Nothing more. "It's bedtime for me, I think." Walking over, you bent down in front of the couch to meet Bakugou eye to eye. He must have agreed with your line of thinking, because the soft kiss only lasted a second before both of you pulled away. "I guess I'll see you tomorrow. Good night, Bakugou,"
Ashita.
he whispered, eyes darkening the smallest fraction as you rounded the couch and disappeared into your room. Bakugou waited a minute to make sure your bedroom remained silent before he strode quickly into the bathroom, stripped down, and doused himself in ice-cold water. It made him shiver, but he grit his teeth and endured it in an attempt to clear his head.
Fuck, not good.
With the question of whether or not he could stay here out of the way, Bakugou now faced the fact that a lot could happen in 3 weeks, especially considering the stupidly hot makeout session less than an hour ago. It was one thing to be emotionally honest on the grounds that tiptoeing around feelings was childish. Bakugou was someone who dove headfirst into most situations, but this wasn't a battle to be won. It involved trying to make sure he didn't royally screw up anything and hurt you. Mostly because he had no idea what the hell he was doing when it came to this type of thing, and he couldn't ask for advice from anyone. Once his skin turned numb from the cold, he turned the knob in the opposite direction until steam floated up to the ceiling from the heat.
What do I fucking do?
He growled into the emptiness of the ceramic tiles. What happened on the couch was far more enjoyable than he wanted to admit, and it was obvious you were just as into it as he was. Casual affection was one thing, but being more physical was something he couldn't even think about before his ears burned. Was it really a good idea to keep this going now that he had time? The more attached he got, you got, the shittier it would feel when he ultimately leaves for good. Even without ever experiencing proper romance for himself, Bakugou knew that much. If he'd miss your damn smile now, he'd surely have an even tougher time 3 weeks from now. But doing so otherwise hadn't worked, obviously, and things were far better now without the stress of hiding behind lying to himself. Thoughts of you weighed on his mind with renewed vigor when he finally fell asleep on the couch that he assumed would be his bed for the remainder of his stay. It was then you remembered the odd piece of paper you'd found this morning. Your eyes... Yep. You sent her the same picture of you and Bakugou that you sent your friend to appease her curiosity. Plus, you felt like bragging about him a bit. Okay, sent it. Tell me what you think. Hello? What the? That was too on point. What the hell? Bakugou assumed you wouldn't do it now. Oh my god, did y'all hear my stomach? Damn, that was loud. He thought while dipping his things out extra. Dipping. Whoa, my brain just lost its place. Where? Dip it low, pick it up slow, move it all around, pick it up on the dance floor. Pop to pop that thing. His brash attitude didn't always have the most positive effect on his social standing. Whew. Breathe. You pulled back agonizingly. Agonizingly.